My name is Esther Sundström, and I'm a partner at Deloitte, working primarily with risk management with IT and technology in different shapes and forms. And I'm also the lead for our Fast 50 program that we have within Deloitte globally. I will today walk you through a little bit about what we've seen in the list that we produce every year, some trends that we see in that as well, and general themes that we see coming up in the tech industry. So, the list then that we present, called Fast 50, we presented it last week for this year, and we did it in 4 webcasts that can be found on fast50.se, where we have a lot of guests in our programs, both from the actual companies being on the list, but also with experts that we interact with that can talk about the business as such. And the theme for this year's webcast was the same that will be for the talk today, which is the tech industry solving the right problems? And this is important from 2 aspects, I think. First of all is, as we've heard in the panel just now, also around that going into this recession that we're now entering, or this economic downturn, we will expect people to be more diligent in the way that they use their money. We will see people, when they have less disposable income, to think a lot about their priorities as such. So we can't have, as we heard, tech for the tech's sake. It needs to solve real problems for us. And if I look at my use of tech, sure, I have to a certain degree things that I use on a regular basis that I need to have in my life. The way that I operate the carpool that I'm using, or the banking services that I use on a regular basis. But there's also the occasional nice to have. Like, for example, picking up my dry cleaning and then dropping it off, even though I have a dry cleaning facility on my street. And if I'm honest, also spending quite a bit of time watching funny cat videos online. So what we see now going into this is that tech companies will have to solve real problems, not build on hype. Secondly, a common piece of advice that a lot of tech entrepreneurs get is solve a problem you have yourself, because chances are that you will see other people having similar problems as well. Well, if we look at that, we also know that recent statistics and the statistics over the past years have shown that the venture capital money flowing into companies founded by women has been around 1% to 2% globally. In Sweden, it's been around 1%. And I saw recent statistics last week showing that it's probably actually dropped from 1% to 0.5% over 2021 in Sweden. And we also know that the general representation of people of color in this industry is quite low. So the diversity in general is not very good. So given that, whose problems are actually getting solved? And what does that mean for the future of tech and the future of tech in our society, if we are serious with that we think that tech is an integral part and should also represent our whole communities? So I'll come back to this question throughout these coming minutes. So, first of all, a little bit about the Deloitte Sweden technology. So it's the ranking of the fastest growing tech companies or technology companies, and it's based on the revenue increase over the past 4 years. And here on the slide you also see some of the companies that have been on the list previously. So some of them are very recognizable and have done very well for themselves over the past years. So the list is then based on the revenue growth over the past years, as I mentioned. So that means that for this year, it's between the years of 2018 to 2021. So who showed up on the list? If we look at the 3 winners, or the 3 top positions this year, if we start at number 3, we have Goodbye Kansas, working in film and gaming and TV in different ways. Place 2 is Vakanta, who's actually the 2nd year in a row that they end up on the 2nd place. And they're an online platform for finding consultants and managing contingent workforce. And on position number 1, we have Info Solutions, who is a medtech company working with communication between labs and different healthcare providers. And they were actually key in the pandemic and working with the testing, the COVID testing, where they received the trust from the Public Health Agency to scale the COVID testing and increase the pace of getting the results back. So that is actually a big reason for the very high numbers that you see on there as well. So a few trends on this. It's first of all, it's record-breaking. The growth numbers that we've seen have been truly amazing over this year. We can also see that, of course, this is very much fueled by low interest rates and good access to capital as well. So also did not see very much of a COVID hit, for example. Actually, many tech companies seem to have thrived when we actually moved to more technology-based ways of communicating and running our businesses. Another trend that we also see is an increasing number of companies showing up on the list from green tech and from medtech. I'm not going to go through them in detail, but if you look at the environmental technology side of things, there's a lot around solar energy and solar power. There's also quite a bit about charging cars, electrical cars in a good way, which we also saw on last year's list. If we look at the medtech side, kind of the healthcare and life science, you see Info Solutions, like I mentioned. We also have companies that connects the patients with the different caregivers and medical specialists, and also some deep kind of data and managing of really rare diseases as well in this. So more kind of science or connected to lab work. So talk about solving problems, huh? And I think that we've seen some of them thriving from the pandemic, as I mentioned, but we also see, I think the green tech companies will also kind of walk into the perfect storm around this time, looking at the energy prices going up, etc. So never waste a good crisis, I guess, is what we'll see going forward. And speaking of crisis then, looking at what I mentioned earlier, that we see a lack of diversity among tech companies around the numbers of investments going into that. We have also seen over the past years there's been one female CEO on the list. Different companies every year, but always one female CEO. But as it turns out, we see that the numbers of employees, female employees and leaders in the tech industry actually is increasing. And we have statistics showing that it will be around 30% in coming years. And why am I then pointing out these companies on the screen now? It's because they had recently had significant layoffs. So this means that there will be more talent floating around, coming from big tech industries with a lot of competence, great networks, going into the, or at least being able to hire for the more nimble and fast-moving tech companies. And it also means that a lot of people with great network that will come together and form new companies, at least there's the potential for that as well. So, to summarize, a little bit around, are we solving the right problems? What can we see around this? Well, there's probably a lot of untapped potential, because we know that diverse teams performs better. And if we can see a greater increase of diversity in our teams working within the tech industry, there should also be new ventures that we can find as an industry, rather than being tech for tech's sake. And I think also we can see that there really are real problems to be solved. We heard that also in the panel discussion just now. And there are real talented people trying to crack them. And I think that with the trends that we've seen in both green tech and in med tech, we see that there are solutions that can have a really big impact on our future. So I'll wrap up there, and please visit fast50.se, the whole list of companies you'll find there. You'll also find the webcasts and looking into our guests that we have there. And of course, also you're welcome to contact me on LinkedIn, and I'll also be around for lunch. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Esther. Please stay for a question here. There is an audience here in the room, and we have many more watching online. What would be your call to action to the investors present online and here physically when it comes to diversity? Because we know that diversity is key to solving all problems, not just from one perspective. So what would be your call to action?
Yeah, and I think quite often, at least I hear a lot of comments around, well, we can't find the companies, or there are no companies, or we don't find the kind of the females or the people of color working with this. And I would challenge that, actually. That probably means that you need to broaden your network, you need to look elsewhere, and you might need to have another lens than what you've had previously. Because there definitely are companies that are more diverse and that have that type of background. And I also would assume just simply support women and support people of color coming into the industry, and make sure that they get the network and the kind of the connections walking in that others maybe already have from university or from other types of communities.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Esther.
Thank you.